Welcome back to A Better Choice Homestead, where on my channel I focus on food, growing it, preparing it, and preserving it. And today I am going to be doing pumpkins. So I'm going to be making a pumpkin puree that I can freeze and or freeze dry, but we're also going to make an entire pumpkin pie from scratch on today's video. So if you are new to making pies from scratch and interested in learning how to do that, welcome, and you can follow along. So I purchased these pie pumpkins from Azure Standard. I just picked them up in my order this week, and that was actually going to be my video for tomorrow, but because we're coming up on Thanksgiving, I am going to go ahead and put this video in ahead of that one, and I'll do my Azure one next weekend. So these are organic pumpkins. I've got, I think, 13 pumpkins in all, and you only need about 2 cups of pumpkin puree to make a pie. So I'm gonna set aside 2 cups of that, and then I will freeze the rest of this and possibly then freeze dry it at some point later down the line. The first thing I need to do is get the tops of these pumpkins cut off. Then I'm gonna slice them in half, scoop out all of those seeds, which I have a bowl for, because I will be roasting some pumpkin seeds as well. And then we're going to roast these on a preheated 350-degree oven for about 45 minutes. I'm going to be using 2 large baking trays. Hopefully I can get all of them on there. So I only have to spend 45 minutes roasting these pumpkins before we move on to the next step. But we'll go ahead and we'll do the pie crust while these are baking. So I am just going to, like I said, get the tops cut off. These came in really good condition, but there are a couple with some, they're starting to get just tiny, tiny little soft spots on them. This one's actually not too bad, but I want to get these preserved as soon as possible. So that's why one of the reasons we are doing this today and not a little bit later in the week. But it'll be nice to have these done so that I won't have to bake them on Thanksgiving, because the oven gets a lot of use on Thanksgiving. I can just stick this pie when it's done in the freezer and it will be ready to go. Pie pumpkins are what you want to use for pumpkin pie. If you use a larger pumpkin, like a jack-o'-lantern type pumpkin, the flesh is gonna be really, really stringy. It's not gonna puree down into a smooth and delicious consistency. So you definitely want to use pie pumpkins, and these seeds look fantastic. I might actually save some of these seeds to try planting next year, because these are organic and they're beautiful. So if I like the flavor of these, which I'm assuming I will go ahead and dry some of these seeds out to grow. And the stringy stuff in here, you want to get out as much as you can. You don't have to be incredibly detailed about it, but you want as much as you can. And it does like to kind of stick on there, so you kind of have to scrape the flesh with the spoon. And my dogs will actually eat this. They love pumpkin, and it's so healthy for you. And anything that I don't save, like the seeds or the big pulp, that I will feed to my dogs, like for example this, as well as the skin that's on the pumpkin after it roasts, I will compost. So none of this pumpkin is going to go to waste. I'm just squeezing those seeds off of this big piece of innards here. And that's quite a bit of seeds out of half of a pumpkin. So this is going to yield quite a few pumpkin seeds, which will be nice. All right, now that I've got a pretty cleaned out pumpkin here, I'm just gonna slice that down into pieces about yay big, and then get them onto the roasting pans. And when I get all of the trays filled, all of the pumpkins chopped up and ready to go, I'll bring you back, show you what that yielded, and then we're gonna pop these into the oven, and then we'll get started making the pie crust. Well, that took about an hour to get the pumpkins carved. I did get a massive bowl of seeds here. These I'm just gonna cover with water and let them sit out overnight. Then I'll put them in a colander and just kind of wash them, pull out the ones that I want to save for growing in next year's garden, and then I will put the rest of them back in probably this bowl with some water and some salt, let them sit for one more day, drain them, and then I can get them roasted. As far as the pumpkins go, this is a lot of pumpkin. But I did not do 3 pumpkins. 2 definitely were bad. They had mold on the inside, and with one left, I didn't want to do a whole nother round or try to fit another tray into the oven because these are the large trays and that's all I can fit in there. So these are gonna go in for 45 minutes, and while those are cooking, we're gonna do the pie crust. This pie crust recipe is super easy and it's a no-fail pie crust recipe. Super simple ingredients. We've got some sugar, some flour, some salt, some ice water, and 1 cup of butter, 16 tablespoons. So I'm gonna start with my food processor and add 2.5 cups of flour. And you want your flour kind of fluffy when you measure it, not packed down. We're going to do 2 tablespoons of sugar. And 1 teaspoon of salt. I use Redmond's real salt. You can use whatever salt you have or like. And then we are going to cut down this block of butter here. This is a 1 cup brick. And I'm gonna just cut it down into small pieces, and then I'm gonna add half of it in here at a time, and I'm gonna pulse it through until it gets pea-sized and it kind of clumps with the rest of the ingredients in there. And actually first I'm gonna pulse this up before I even add any butter. Yep, those look good. Great. All right, let's pulse this really quick. Just to get everything mixed through. And now I'm going to spread that butter in here. And we'll get that pulsed in. Now, the butter we want to try to keep in pea-sized pieces, which is why the water that I'm gonna add, I had probably about 5 ice cubes in. We want it ice cold because these blades are gonna heat up the butter and it's gonna try to melt it, and we don't want that. The more you can keep your butter intact, the flakier your pie crust is going to be, because cold butter that is in pieces, when you put that into a hot oven, it steams as it cooks, and that steam creates little tiny air pockets throughout your crust, which makes it really flaky and yummy. So we don't want the butter to melt. So we're gonna pulse this in here, and then we're going to add up to a half of a cup of ice cold water. Then we're gonna stick this into the fridge while the pumpkin is cooking, to let it chill. Again, to set back up that butter because we want the rise of the crust in flaky layers. And I'm just gonna get this one chopped up really quick. So slicing it down the long way, flipping it, slicing it down the long way, and then cross-cutting it. All right, so we're gonna pulse this. half of the rest of this butter. Or about half. I do see some, bits of butter in the flour here. So that's exactly what I want to see. I'll show you that when we're done. That looks really good. Let me show you. So we've got just little crumbly bits in here with the butter broken throughout. So this looks good. You can see just little bits of butter. So we're going to keep going with the rest of this butter, and then we're going to add the ice water. This is going to make 2 crusts, and I'm only going to use 1 for the pumpkin pie. And I think I still have 1 pie crust in the freezer. So that'll give me 2 by placing the second one from this batch in the freezer, which will give me a top and bottom pie crust for apple pie at Christmas. But you know what? I'm actually going to be making cherry pie for Christmas as well. And I might end up doubling up on those just so I have some to freeze dry, because freeze-dried pie comes out kind of like biscotti. It's amazing. Pumpkin pie especially. So I will likely make more pumpkin pie as well for Christmas. And I'll freeze dry a lot of that pie. All right, now I need up to a half of a cup of ice cold water. I may not use all of it. You only want to use enough water just to get your pie crust dough to set up. So I'm going to pulse it as I pour this through, and I'm only going to pour enough, and I've got a little room in here where I could add more if I have to. Only going to pour just enough until this sets up. Coming along, it's looking good. All right, I'm going to check that. It wasn't quite half a cup because I didn't fill the measuring cup to the top. Yeah, that feels great. So it is moldable and not wet. Perfect. All right, I've got 2 pieces of plastic wrap here, and I'm just going to dump the dough onto one of these pieces here, and we're going to form 2 dough balls. We're not going to do any kneading, we're just going to form them. So you don't want to handle it a lot because the warmth of your hands will melt that butter. And I cannot stress enough how important it is to have that butter remain cold to do its magic in the oven. A lot of times when I do pie crust, I will make like a double or a triple batch, because this dough freezes really well, and then you have pie crust ready to go because it defrosts pretty quickly and you want to use it cold anyway. So if you defrost it to where it's pliable, you can roll it out even with a little bit of effort, then it makes it simple to just cook up a pie or a hand pie. We do more hand pies here than whole pies because they're smaller. You don't waste a whole lot if you make a pie and then don't eat it all, or you cut into a pie and you don't want to stick that cut pie into the freezer to save for later. So very little handling, one dough ball that I'm going to cut in half, and then I'm actually going to weigh this just to make sure that my halves are relatively the same size. So I'm just going to put right now this other piece of plastic on my scale and turn that on. All right, 13.1, 13.8, so we're about there. I'll just shave a little bit more off of this guy, and that should be good. I'm just gonna make him into a ball with minimal handling, and I'm just gonna flatten it out into a disc shape. And fold the plastic up, and he's gonna go in the fridge for at least 30 minutes. We've got about 20 minutes left on the oven. So that's perfect because I'm gonna have to, deal with the hot pumpkins here in a minute while this finishes chilling. All right, these are gonna go in the fridge and I'll see you back here in about 25 minutes. All right, so here I've got my pie plate turned upside down on my pie rolling mat. And we've got rings here that measures out how far the pie pan goes, which is 12 inches. But we have to take into account the depth of the pie pan as well. So I'm actually going to try to take that out to the 14-inch mark, which is the second ring from the outer edge. And we're gonna roll that out as thin as we can, just to make sure that we come up all the way on the sides of the pie crust. And now this is really cold because of that butter, and it's been in the refrigerator for a while now. So it's going to be hard to roll out. I'm going to have to put some muscle into it, but we're gonna get that done. So when you're working with cold pie crust dough, it takes a minute for the friction with your rolling pin to even start to notice anything happening with the dough. And you want to be sure that you're turning the dough at the same time, because even though you're not noticing much of a change, tiny little changes are happening, and you want to try to keep it in a round shape. But you'll see that I end up, taking some pieces and smushing them on the edges just to get a nice symmetrical shape. It does take a minute, but we do get there, I promise. And one thing I really like about this pie rolling mat is I can turn the mat. So not only can I pick up my dough while it's small, but I can also just turn the mat instead of having to, walk all over different sides of the counter to get this completely rolled out. And now that I know I've reached my mark, I'm just taking a pizza cutter and, making this symmetrical. And I'm gonna save the little strips that I'm taking off here, just in case there's any thin areas on the pie. And it's really easy to get this into the pie pan by just putting the pie pan on top. You wanna make sure that it's centered. You got about the same amount of overhang on each side, and then just flip it in. And then you do have to be a little bit careful when you peel this silicone mat away from the dough so that the dough doesn't rip. But this came off beautifully. It just took a minute to be patient just to get it started around the edges. So I'm lifting the edges here and just letting kind of gravity help that fall to the bottom of the pan. And then with the overhang that we have, I'm gonna be tucking that under. If I tuck it up, it's likely, more likely to burn. So I'm just tucking all of that overhang under. And then I use my 2 knuckles well, 3 knuckles altogether, 2 on my left hand and 1 on my right hand. And the one on the right hand goes in between the 2 on my left hand. And that's how I form my fluted edges. And the ones that are on the inside of the pie, where I'm pushing those 2 knuckles in, that's where it gets thin. And that's where I'm gonna do just a little bit of patchwork, and it comes out beautiful. And with that beautiful pie crust ready to go into the oven, I'm just using a piece of parchment paper. I am making sure that there is overhang to cover all of that crust. And then I just pour in my pie weights. My pie weights are pinto bean. It works beautifully. It holds the pie down so it doesn't bubble up while it's cooking. And that is just going into my preheated oven for 20 minutes. And at the 20-minute mark, I will take it out and I will remove the parchment paper and the pinto beans, and I will put it back into the oven for 10 minutes. And now I need to make a little bit of brown sugar. I don't have any, and it's really simple to make. So I just poured as much white sugar into a bowl that will fit into the container I use for my brown sugar. And that's somewhere between 4 and 6 cups. I'm not exactly sure. And then I just pour in, about a quarter of a cup of some dark molasses. Now that's not your blackstrap molasses, that's just regular molasses. I get this one at Azure Standard. It is organic, it's really nice. This is going to produce a light brown sugar. If you want a dark brown sugar, add more molasses. And how much? Just eyeball it. If it looks too light when you're done mixing, add a little bit more. If you went a little bit too dark and you're not happy with it, pour in some more sugar. There's not a lot of science behind it. It is just white sugar and molasses, and it is really simple to make. I'm using my hands just to make sure that everything on the bottom is, well incorporated in here so that we don't have a pocket of molasses or a pocket of white sugar. And then I'll just pour that into my brown sugar container, and it is ready to go when we are ready to make the pumpkin pie filling. Now I've got to finish with these pumpkins. So I saved 2 pieces so I could show you what I was doing. I just peel the skins right off of them. Sometimes they tear off really easily. Sometimes on the edges I have to get them started with a knife. But the underneath flesh is golden, it is roasted, it has such a beautiful aroma and flavor because of being roasted in the oven. This couldn't be easier. Of course, it is time consuming when you consider how many pumpkins I did and how much this yielded, but it was totally worth giving up an afternoon to get this all prepped and done, because I will then have a lot of pumpkin in my freezer and or freeze dried to use in many, many recipes in the upcoming year. So to get this pumpkin pureed, I'm going to use the food processor with the blade attachment on the bottom, and I'm just going to put in a good handful, couple handfuls of the roasted pumpkin. And I've also got some water because I need to add water to this. This did not boil. This is a completely dry roasted method of making the puree. And we do need a little bit of liquid in there, just not only to get it to spin with the blades, but also because, your puree should be a little bit wet. You don't want it overly saturated with water. So I'm adding a little bit at a time and just seeing how it goes throughout the process. And it takes quite a bit because of how dry this is. And every pumpkin is going to be different. And of course, I'm using a bunch of different pumpkins. So it's hard to say how much water to use. Just eyeball it. But start slow, because it's going to be hard to take it out if you put too much in. You can drain it through like a cheesecloth or a really, really fine mesh sieve. But if you just go slow and add a little bit at a time, you should be fine. This puree came out fantastic. Okay, our timer has gone off, so I'm taking the pie out after the 20 minutes and putting the ring on so it doesn't burn, and putting it back into the oven for 10 minutes. And I'm just pouring my pie weights back into their jar. I am absolutely thrilled with how the pureed pumpkin came out. I tasted it. It is phenomenal. It is absolutely delicious. The consistency is perfect. Now we're going to go ahead and make the filling. And for this, we are going to be using 2 room temperature large eggs. So, I took these out about an hour or so ago. And I'm going to beat these first in a large bowl. And I'm going to hang on to those shells because they're going to become a part of my garden next spring. And we're just going to whip these up really quick. All right, and to that, I'm going to add 2 cups of this pureed pumpkin. This is such a large pie dish that I think the recipe is 2 cups, but I think I am going to do maybe maybe 2.5 to 3. I'm gonna think about it as I add these ingredients, and we'll see, how much this yields. So 2 cups to start. And then 1 full can of 12 ounces of evaporated milk, not condensed milk, evaporated milk. I don't like all the extra sugar that is in condensed milk. So the condensed milk and the evaporated milk both have water removed, and that's how it's different than milk. But with the condensed milk, more sugar is added, up to a couple of cups per can. We're gonna get to packaging up the rest of this pumpkin while the pie is in the oven. So I'm gonna use 3/4 of a cup of this light brown sugar, firmly packed. And we're gonna do a teaspoon of salt, a teaspoon of ginger powder, a teaspoon of cinnamon, and a teaspoon of nutmeg. And I'm gonna go ahead and throw in a cup more of this pumpkin. It's just such a deep pie dish. I really need to get a different pie dish. I've said that before, I know, and I haven't done it. I don't think I've made any pies since the last time I filmed making a pie. Smells really good. I'm gonna give it a little taste, see if I want to adjust the seasonings before we put it into the pie shell. That is perfect. That is delicious. And I am just gonna pour this into the pie shell. Yeah, that looks good. I'm glad I added the extra pumpkin in here. That is coming up right where I want it in the pie. Now this is, really soupy because pumpkin pie is a custard, and that can be a little challenging to cook. You definitely want there to be a little jiggle in the middle of the pie when you take it out. If you lose that jiggle, it's going to be too baked, too dry, and you're probably going to get a big crack or multiple cracks, running through the pie. If you undercook it, it's not going to set up properly. So the time range is going to be 40 to 60 minutes. But you're going to be checking it every 5 minutes or so during that window of time until there's just a little jiggle left right in the center of the pie. And I definitely want to cook this on a baking pan just to avoid any messes. Also, if you don't have a pie shell ring to protect the edges of your pie crust, you should use just some strips of aluminum foil that you can crimp around the outside, because otherwise the edges of your pie crust can burn, and that's not going to make for a very pretty pie. So if you don't have one of these, use some foil. This is just going to go right into the oven. And having this tray makes it really easy to move in and out of the oven as well. Now I'm going to portion out the rest of this pureed pumpkin into 2-cup measures that I can freeze, and that will give me some easy options over the course of the next season or two to make pumpkin bread, pumpkin waffles, pumpkin pancakes, pumpkin cookies, more pumpkin pie, pumpkin soup, lots of different recipes that you can use pumpkin puree for. And when I roasted this, I did not put any oil or anything on it because I definitely wanted it to be true pumpkin. So that is what we have ended up with here, and it is absolutely delicious. So I'm just gonna put about 2 cups per bag, and then we know we have 3 cups in the pie. So we'll see how many we yielded from all of those pumpkins. And I'm gonna kind of smush this all the way down to the bottom of the bag and kind of fold it over on itself to release any air bubbles and then seal the zipper. These are freezer quart-size bags. And then I'm just gonna smush it flat. And then I can just stack them flat in the freezer, and they'll be easy to thaw like that as well because they won't be a thick ball in there. You know, this time of year, it is so nice to have things, all things pumpkin. It's just like the flavor of the season. You can use this to make drinks if you'd like. You can make pumpkin flavored eggnog for Christmas or even for Thanksgiving. Doesn't look like we're gonna get another full 2 cups, so I probably shorted myself by adding that extra cup to the pie, but that's okay. I can use 1 cup of pumpkin to make some pumpkin soup. I can also freeze dry some if I'd like to and powder it down and make a pumpkin spice, which could be really lovely in beverages. Yeah, this is just 1 cup. So I definitely shorted myself, but that's okay. I wanted the extra volume in that pie. So I'll mark this bag as 1 cup, the rest are 2. So between this bag here and the pie that we're cooking, that is 4 cups total. Six, 8, 10, 12, 14 cups of pumpkin puree. So I'm just gonna get these labeled, pop them into the freezer so they're ready whenever I wanna make something pumpkin over the next couple of seasons. And I'll bring you back at the 40-minute mark when we check this pie. Here we are at the 40-minute mark. We are definitely not done. You can see how much jiggle that still has in it. So I'm gonna probably give it 10 minutes before I take it out again to double check it. But I can see that my crust is getting brown. So I'm actually gonna put foil over the top of this protector because I definitely don't want it to get any browner. I'm actually surprised that this happened. I've not had that happen before when using this. So I've got some foil here and I'm just gonna tear it into strips and fold it over so it's kind of thin, and then just wrap that around the pie. Other than that, it looks and smells delicious. Back into the oven we go. All right, we are at the 50-minute mark now, and this pie has just a little jiggle right in the center. So the outer edges have set up, and this looks great. So I am gonna call this pie done at the 50-minute mark. I'm gonna go ahead and take this foil off, and now I'm just gonna let this cool down completely, and then we will get it wrapped up for the freezer, and then I'll be able to take it out the night before Thanksgiving. So Wednesday night, put it in the fridge, and this will be just ready to consume. It'll be beautiful. So I'll give you a look as we're wrapping it up. Here is our pie. It is perfect. The crust did get browned, but it didn't burn. I'm glad I did the extra layer of foil over it. I'm not sure why it was browning so quickly with the ring on. That's a silicone ring. That's never happened before, but this came out beautiful. I'm super pleased with this. There's no cracking in the middle, so the timing on this was perfect. I have one pie pumpkin left, and I will just probably get this cooked up in something before the end of next weekend, so sometime this week. And then I have this huge bowl of pumpkin seeds that are gonna, soak for 24 hours. I'll give them a good wash and then soak them again for an additional 24 hours in a salty water. And then I'll get them thoroughly dried out, and then I'll bake them. The last time we did pumpkin seeds, I think I did 4 different toppings on them. So I ran them through the oven 4 different times. I think we did buttermilk ranch. I think we did just plain salt. I think we did a Cajun, and we did something extra spicy too. So I'm not sure exactly what we're gonna do with these, but these are a nutrition powerhouse. Pumpkin seeds are really good for you, and we just love them. They're a really good snack. To get this into the freezer, I'm gonna wrap it in just some plastic wrap. I wanna make sure that I'm gonna have enough plastic wrap to go under the bottom and up the other side. And I'll do that both ways so it's fully covered. Even though it's just gonna be in there for a couple of days, I still want it protected from air. So I'm going to turn it this way and cover this side. So there's the plastic. It doesn't have to be pretty. It just needs to be functional. And I'm going to do the same thing with some foil. And if you want pumpkin pie warm on Thanksgiving, you can remove the covering once it's thawed and just stick it into a low oven. I would probably do maybe 275 or 300 degrees, for maybe 15 minutes. And now I don't have to make dessert on Thanksgiving. And not to mention, I have a ton of pumpkin puree now in my freezer that I can use for whatever I want to in my baking and my cooking for the next several months at least. Thank you so much for joining me on my journey of trying to preserve a year's worth of pumpkins. I think I did pretty good. I don't think it'll be quite a year, but I was short 3 pumpkins, the 2 I had to toss and then the 1 that just didn't fit onto the roasting tray. So I'm pleased with the outcome, but if I can still get more pumpkins this year, I'll probably do more. I'm thrilled that I got this baby completely ready for the holiday. I am going to stick him in the freezer because it's late on Saturday night and we're not gonna eat it till Thursday. So I'm gonna pop it in the freezer for a couple of days. I'll take it out sometime on Wednesday, stick it in the refrigerator and let it defrost, overnight until we're ready to eat it on Thursday. I hope that you and your family have a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday. I will be posting another video on Tuesday, but that's not going to be holiday related. So my blessings to you this holiday season. My name is Kelly, you're at A Better Choice Homestead, and I do hope you come back and visit again soon.